governance, and good governance has to become manifest, not only through the budget, but the government's performance.
It is time that we push some amount of consumption in rural India, in mass market products, and at the bottom end of the pyramid.
In the pressures in which the government is living, and perhaps being a coalition government this time, government should not go out and spend this money in form of extra subsidies.
Although I am by instinct and hardcore ideology always a Democrat, I feel the functioning of our democracy has become an impediment to finding foundational solutions to problems and looking for shortcuts. This has to stop.
Beyond the jargon of economics, finance and accounting, budgets come down to this. How much money does the government have? There's good news this time around. Over and above everything the government earns from taxes, exports, public sector unit revenues and bonds, the RBI has paid out to the government 2.11 lakh crores of rupees in May this year. That's an added corpus at the disposal of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Now the only question is, what would she do with it?
Government last year, in their revised budgeted estimates, set a fiscal deficit target of 5.8%. They have come at around 5.63%. So they have overachieved on that, which is a massive thing. For this financial year, they have put a target of 5.1%, and they are likely to follow the glide path of 4.5% in the next coming financial year, right? So I think from that point of view, I think this government will stand by what they have provisioned for and what they are targeting for. How does the RBI massive dividend help out the government? Look, honestly, I think it's a huge bump up in the RBI dividend. That extra amount of money is what has helped the government lower the fiscal deficit thing. Now, there are two ways in which the government can spend this money. Either government can go ahead and fuel the capex part, fuel the infra part, which government has already been doing, right? So government is planning for 11.11 lakh kind of a capex push this year. They can very well go ahead and achieve that target in the first half and fuel in more money, or maybe increase that number.
I think while we have to keep an Arjun's eye on fiscal deficit, the path or the slope should be in a manner which does not disturb the growth momentum. Today, our growth momentum is pushing us to become the fastest growing major economy in the world. We have to balance between growth and inflation, which both government and RBI has done so well in the last few years.
My only hope and fear is in the pressures in which the government is living, and perhaps being a coalition government this time, government should not go out and spend this money in form of extra subsidies, because I think this money has to be well provisioned and has to fuel in some injection into the economy to boost further production and further manufacturing.
On the 28th of June, India officially became part of JP Morgan's Government Bond Index for emerging markets. This sets the stage for significant financial inflows into the world's fifth largest economy. India joins the club that includes China, Indonesia and Mexico, each with a maximum cap of 10% on its bonds. Indian government bonds will begin to be included in the index with a 1% weight being transferred initially. This weight will be increased by 1 percentage points each month until it reaches a cap of 10% by March 31st, 2025. What does that mean? More money. Foreign investors have already directed $10 billion into securities eligible for the index since the announcement. The JP Morgan Emerging Markets Global Diversified Index manages about $213 billion in assets globally. India's 10% weight in the index is expected to attract $21 billion or 1.7 trillion rupees in investments by March 31st, 2025 alone.
This will lower the borrowing cost for corporates as well, and will further fuel more capex from private sector, which is again one thing which has been the breaking point for this government, that private sector has not come out and not done enough capex. It's only government capex which has happened for last 5-10 years. Once private sector comes out, I think the employment opportunities will swell overall.
How do we revive private capex? Companies are extremely low leverage today. Their capacity utilization is reasonably high. There is enough capital available in capital market. So it's not the question of money. It's the question of ease of doing business. It's the question of technological disruption coming. For example, someone who started into lab-grown diamond business 2-3 years ago, today they are becoming uncompetitive because technology has rapidly scaled up. Such kind of technological disruption is resulting into deferment of investment decisions. I think what we should be focusing upon is truly improving ease of doing business on the ground. Our processes for land acquisition, for labor reforms, for ease of doing business can be further improved upon. We have come long way through digitization and simplification and removal of laws, but it's a journey. The destination has not yet been reached, and we must continue taking bigger leaps on this so that our entrepreneurs are free to invest based on their requirement.
Streamlining of the GST, which in the manner that it currently functions, although vastly improved, works against small and medium enterprises who have to pay up GST upfront but are compensated for it over 8 or 9 months of wait. You have to invest more in the SME sector, which contributes 50% to our manufacturing production and provides even greater chunk of the employment. You have to improve vocational skills. Your centers have to become world class so that you have people who are equipped even without a job to be able to earn on the basis of the skills that they have learned. You have to create more jobs. And somewhere you have to tackle inequality and the priorities also of the middle class, where I think shrinking incomes have reduced their well-being. Now, it's a difficult job for any finance minister. I have great respect for Nirmala Sitharaman. But unfortunately, it has to be a bouquet of many frontal attacks.
3 things come to my mind. One is, of course, making the compute infrastructure available so that our startups are able to build these models, train these models, relying on infrastructure that's readily available in India at a reasonable cost. The second thing, which to me is important, is that our path to catching up or getting ahead has to be a non-linear path. It can't be the same linear steps that the rest of the world is taking. And to enable that, what the government can do is to make sure that a large amount of data is freely available for these startups to innovate on, and these sandboxes are available to them. Today, for example, most of these LLMs that have been created abroad have been trained on data that is only available on the internet. While if you look at the Indian context, I'm sure there's a lot of Indian content which is not available on the internet, which would be required for you to accurately capture the Indian context. The third thing that the government can do is to make sure that there are enough incentives for talent to come back to India. Semiconductor is a good example where this nascent industry can benefit if that large Indian origin talent pool comes back and contributes.
They will continue to carry forward the legacy already built. For example, infrastructure investment has been growing at a fast pace. Between 2014 to 24, we almost doubled infrastructure in power, roads, port capacity, electrification of railway, airport, and metro. This will continue going forward. There will be infrastructure investments in roads, railways, and other related activity like water. Second, this budget will focus on defense manufacturing. We have two neighbors with whom we are not on best of the terms, and hence it is important that we build self-sufficiency in defense. The third sector will be education and healthcare. In both this segment, India is well behind its peer group and we need to catch up fast. There will be higher allocation towards creating primary and secondary education and towards developing healthcare ecosystem which benefits poor by keeping costs lower. The fourth thing the government should focus upon in order to meet the path of fiscal prudence is asset monetization. You have built in 10 years infrastructure which was built in previous 67 years. Now some of this can be monetized so that without losing the path of fiscal prudence, we can keep on reinvesting.
One of the sectors that has been a cause for worry is India's agri-economy. Rural areas are home to over 60% of India's 1.4 billion people. The economic conditions in the countryside are tough to say the least, with climate change only making things worse. The average amount of debt among rural households increased from 32,500 rupees in the year 2012 to over 74,000 rupees in 2019. By December 2023, household debt levels were as high as 40% of the GDP. Most of that would have had to come from rural India. What's worse, agriculture's share in India's economy has only been contracting over the last few years, down from 20% in the year 2020 to about 18% in the year 2023.
Rural distress, but through a multiplicity of instruments, in a major way boosting agricultural productivity, building food processing chains, storehouses, infrastructure of communication, commercial outlets. At the same time, you have not boosted agricultural productivity sufficiently so that agriculture itself is able to absorb those that are employed with it. And rural distress has become a nationally pervasive problem. These are essential steps. That's why I said we need a mission agriculture.
It is the job of the government to ensure that there is enough economic activity in rural India. This year monsoon is likely to be good. That should benefit agriculture. In agriculture, we are more at the primary end rather than at the processed end. So there is a need to reduce agriculture wastage, ensure there is better management of post-crop production. The second is to create ancillary industry in rural India so that there is not much pressure on the urban India. There are opportunities within rural India. What kind of jobs can be created through Manrega, through Awas Yojana, through Gram Sadak Yojana, that we'll have to see.
I also anticipate millet production to be given as an incentive under the PLI scheme of the government. So my sense is a PLI inclusion out there will mean a whole lot of boost to that kind of a thing. On the overall agrarian economy, I think creating proper irrigation facilities, creating proper water drainage systems, and reducing India's dependence on the monsoon is something which the government's Jal Shakti team should focus on, and I continue to see increased focus on that segment also.